got stress conditioned by tradition, position, and religion? Do we listen or frozen in fiction? So division, not the mission. Trump, Biden, gaps widen, transition, blurred vision, a soul collision. Got a mind.
And the stress divides me.
Stress divides me.
Oh, mind the gap, hey.
Mind the gap, hey.
So why don't you help me?
Why don't you join me? Why don't you help me? Welcome to Minding the Gap video series and podcast brought to you by Behavioral Sciences of Alabama. I'm Paul Bakke, licensed counselor, and I am with Dr. David Barnhart. Good afternoon. It's December 30. We got one more day of 2020.
2020. Suffering the aftermath of 2019. It's been a tough year, hasn't it, Paul?
It has been a tough year. A lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, disruption of normalcy, having to think about things, having to stay at home and stay away from people that we love. For you and I, we've done video and teleconference sessions. We haven't been able to see anybody since March in person, and that creates a lot of disruptions and difficulty and uncertainty and dependence on computers. And today, what I want to talk about is the movie It's a Wonderful Life, because it has some metaphors and some lessons back from the 1940s that still apply today. It's one of my favorite movies. And so
it's one of your favorite movies?
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely my favorite.
How favorite is it?
It's up there. It may be number one. It may be number one. And I was reading an article recently about it, and it really hit home with me that why it was such an important movie for me. When in the 1970s, the owners of the film had forgotten to renew their rights. And so when that happens, it's public domain. Anybody can broadcast it anytime, and they don't have to pay anything. So at the time in the 70s, that's when I grew up, while my parents were celebrating New Year's Eve, my form of celebration was watching that movie at midnight, because they showed it on WRAG Channel 3 in Memphis, Tennessee at midnight on New Year's Eve. And so I would sit in my room by myself, with my little black and white TV, and watch this movie. And I just watch it every year. I look forward. That was my way of celebrating New Year's Eve. And of course, anybody's seen the movie, it's a great story. It's about overcoming things. It's about rethinking things, like we talk about all the time. Every time we get together, we talk about rethinking a new perspective on things that's helpful. And this movie is all about perspective. It's all about what the character George Bailey thinks is success in the beginning, starting when he was a little kid, and realizes time after time that he has to make sacrifices, that he can't really achieve his big dreams and going out and exploring. But in the end, learns that simple, minding the store, very simple, basic things, community, family, that those things have just as much value, if not more, than going out and doing these big adventurous exploring kinds of things. So it's always been a really important movie to me. I always we watch it. We try to watch it every year with my family and show my kids, and we talk about it. And we know all the lines, just about every line. In fact, I was at home. When I say home, I went back to Memphis for the holidays and watched it with my family, and my family growing up, we watched it too. Once we got VCRs, we could actually record it, and watch it over and over when we wanted to. So
and nobody's going to come and arrest you for pirating the thing.
That's right. That's right. So we had the movie. So anyway, I was watching it with my mom and dad, and my dad had a book that was about different movies that were, it was critical reviews of several really important movies. And I was reading it, and it had different quotes of the movies, and it would say this one thing. And I'd look at it and go, That's not right. That's not how the line is. And it was one off. It was, and or it, it was a really small word, but I've seen it so many times that I can even recognize, when just simple lines are not exactly perfect, that is not the way it was. So I'm real familiar with this movie, and it really does relate to what we've been dealing with, this disruption of life that's happened with the pandemic, with a lot of differences of opinion in politics, and a lot of division, and a lot of big guy versus little guy kinds of things. So I thought today would be a good time to talk about the different things about the movie and go through it and really relate it to what we've been talking about.
And encourage people to go watch the movie.
And go absolutely watch the movie. Sure, now I have it on DVD, but you can see behind me, streaming. I'm sure there's plenty of options. It's on every year, at a certain time. I think NBC right now is what I read, that NBC has the rights to it now, and they show it a few times a year. But now with streaming and DVDs, we can all
no problem. It's probably a part of somebody's subscription somewhere.
Right. So anyway, the movie starts out with, if you haven't seen it, even if you have, that's okay. Or if you haven't seen it, I'm going to give it away, but that's really okay too, I think. It's kind of like going to a show, and you go to a show on Broadway, you know what's going to happen, but you're just entertained by the
sure, yeah,
by the acting and the singing, right. Whatever. So it starts out where George Bailey is growing up in a small town, and his father owns a building and loan, a place that they loan money to people to help them just buy just a basic house that they can be comfortable in, and they're not overcharging them for it. And the community basically gives and sort of, they loan money from each other and they pay it back, and and it allows them to just have a basic life.
Yeah.
And then the character, Mr. Potter, who's got all the money and owns everything else, hates the building and loan and wants to kill it, serves on the board, and is over and over again trying to kill it so they can get control of it, and so that he can charge whatever prices that he charges. And his idea is complete materialism. It's complete, the strong survive. George's father confronts him about his lack of compassion. He says, these people have children. And he says, they're not my children. So
yeah.
He just doesn't care. It's just about money and power. And just a pretty villainous character. And George's father is very compassionate, very community minded, and he sees what he's doing as really important. George grows up and sees that it's important, yes, but not as important as going exploring and going and doing all these building things and making this big, huge impact on the world. And it starts with George is in trouble, and we don't know what's happening, but we see a lot of people praying for George, and we hear that something's going on that's wrong. And so they go into heaven. Okay. So they go into heaven, and the angels are getting together, and they're saying, okay, there's somebody that needs our help. Whose turn is it? What angel is turn? Give him an assignment so he can earn his wings. And that's when we get introduced to Clarence. We hear his voice, and he comes up and he's excited, and he's been passed over to get his wings for several times, and because he's just not real smart. and so they can, okay, we'll give him a chance. So they bring in Clarence but he's also got this great spirit. They said he's got the faith of a child.
Yeah.
Which is which is valued in this sense too. Just the innocent spirit and the childlike faithfulness. And so he gets to watch George's life, and starts out when George is just a boy. And so the first thing is George is out there and with his buddies, and they're out in a icy, big icy place where there's a lake there. And his brother, his younger brother, goes through the ice, breaks through the water, and George saves his life, but it costs him his hearing in his ear. And so every time he does something that saves someone or sacrifices, it costs him something. So it just kind of talks about the value of sacrifice and giving and community and doing things that are unselfish, but it may cost you something. So it costs him his hearing. Mm-hmm. Then they show George working at the drugstore for the druggist, and the girl that he eventually marries comes in, and she's been in love with him her whole life, and basically promises in his ear that he can't hear out of, that he'll love it, that she'll love him for the rest of his life, and then he has no idea that he said that. So he's dishing her up ice cream, and he's talking about exploring, and he whips out his National Geographic magazine, and he says, and she says, I've never seen that before. And he says, of course you haven't. Only us explorers get to see this. So this is another thing too that we can really kind of see in our society, is this company has created this myth of adventure and exploration, and this is what you need to do to be successful, and so it really plays on George's mind, now that he's a member of the National Geographic Society, which he proudly says, I'm a member, I've been nominated.
All right.
So this young boy has these dreams of going off and exploring and doing all these fancy things, and he tells her he's gonna go, look at this, I'm gonna go to Fiji Island, and I'm gonna, I may even have a couple of harems and maybe 3 or 4 wives. He's this little kid imagination, talking about being big. So it really kind of starts there. We learn that George is very motivated to get out of the small town and do big things. So then we see that the druggist gets a letter where his son has been killed in the war, and he gets the telegram. He reads the telegram, George does, and sees that the druggist is back there. He's drinking, he's crying. You can tell he's upset. And George is, he's 10, 11 years old, doesn't really know what to do. So he asks him what he can do. And the druggist sends him to make a delivery. So George just happens to notice that the bottle he gets the pills that makes the pills was poison. He was so distraught and he was intoxicated, he didn't realize what he was doing, and he mixed the pills with poison. So he starts yelling at George, get out of here. And he's trying to tell him, and he's upset. The druggist is angry. So George goes to deliver these pills, and he didn't know what to do. So of course you see a sign that says, ask Dad, he knows. It's a cigar advertisement. So he goes in and was going to talk to his dad about it. And his dad, this is where we learn about his father, is fighting with Mr. Potter, who's basically trying to get him to foreclose on loans. And that's when George's father talks about these. They have children, they have a decent they're entitled to have a decent home. They're out of work. We need to consider that, those kinds of things. And Mr. Potter doesn't want to hear any of that. So George confronts Mr. Potter, tells him, he can't call him a failure, and he kind of sticks up for his dad, but he didn't get the advice from his dad because dad was busy. So he doesn't take the pills there. He takes the pills back to the drugstore, and the pharmacist is on the phone. He learns that they haven't been delivered. So he thinks that George is being lazy. So he starts hitting him, starts slapping him in his ear that was sore from the cold and from the going into the ice to save his brother. And George is like, he tells him, he's crying. It's really, it's an awful scene, where he's slapping him. He's crying. He says, you put poison in there. So Mr. Gower finds out. He's like, he's, just overcome with, with emotion, I'm so sorry. He didn't say that, but it's this moment. And George says, I'll never tell. And so Clarence is watching from heaven, and he's saying, did he ever tell about this? He says, no, he never did. So it was another incident where he made a decision and made a sacrifice and showed compassion to someone who made a really terrible mistake and never told anybody. So anyway, so moving along, he graduates high school. He's going to go to college, and his father dies. So he's got to. So, and then the only way to stay for this building and loan to stay alive is if he takes control of it. So he makes a decision to let his younger brother go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Then when his younger brother is going to come back from school 4 years later, he's going to go to college. Younger brother comes back. Now he's married and he's talking about taking a job with his wife's father, which is a great opportunity for him. Of course, George continues to decide stay home, but he's trapped, you know, and that's where some of the parallel of being trapped in this pandemic, you know, is similar. That he was trapped in this little town and not able to move to move into his dreams. So moving right along, he goes on. He marries the girl from the beginning. You know, he resisted it, and finally kind of gives into it. They get married, they have children, but everything that happens is he's in this constant fight to keep the building and loan, to keep his responsibility up. And in the meantime, he's really kind of living the American dream of you get a job, you know, you got a family, you got all these, you know, it's a home. It had some, it was drafty and those kinds of things, but his mind was, he had been sold on this. I've got to do big things. I got to do big things. I'm only important if I do big things. So then there's a big mistake that's made with his not so smart Uncle Billy, who is his father's business partner, who makes a mistake and loses $8,000 when Mr. Potter actually gets the $8,000 that he's going to take. And so there's going to be a deficit. There's going to be a scandal. He's going to go to jail because of the missing money, because they're going to think he stole it. Of course, George decides that he's going to be the one to take the fall and go to jail instead of his Uncle Billy. So on and on and on, you have all these problems. Finally, George decides that he was going to take his own life because he discovers, on a financial perspective, the only thing he was worth was an insurance policy that if he died, then his family would get this money. And so he boiled his worth down to this insurance policy so he decided that, okay, he was going to take his own life. That's when Clarence comes and meets him and decides, I'm going to jump in, because if I jump in, then George will jump in and save me, and that's how he'll save George. So Clarence was a little smarter than we thought in the beginning. He was pretty sharp in that way.
He did turn out to understand how it worked.
So George, trying to convince George that his life he's done so many things, and George is not having it. So George says, "You really think killing yourself is going to solve?" He says, "Well, maybe not. Maybe I just wish I'd never been born." So Clarence says, "Oh, okay. Never been born." So he got a chance to see what his life was going to be like without him. Mm-hmm. So all these terrible things happen. His brother, dies. So he's not the war hero that he ends up being, and doesn't save the people in World War II. All of these things happen that's just sort of demonstrates how his life touched so many lives, and that his value was so great, and all the things that he did to Mr. Gower, accidentally poisoned the kids, goes to jail. I mean, all these terrible things have happened to just really show him. And so finally he's going, I want to live. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when all of his friends come in and basically make up the $8,000. Just gets, and all I had to do is, George is in trouble. All the sacrifice that he had made was returned. And so the movie really kind of gets into the value of friendship, the value of doing for others, the importance of small things. And if you think about,
Mhm.
the grocery store clerks that are going to work every day in the pandemic, and they're helping
Right.
people,
Right.
have food, and
Mhm.
they're out there risking themselves, out there, and it's all nurses and people that are doing, some really big things, and some, very basic kinds of things, uh, that are all important. And we can get into this idea of success and happiness is this big thing where you're making this big splash, um, and money and so forth, and it's just that's all in our minds. That's all, a myth based on what we want to believe, and it's up to us, I guess, to decide what value is. And so that, anyway, the movie is really great in terms of that kind of reinforcement of the idea of happiness is what you make it, and happiness is about helping other people and connecting with people and doing things that matter, not just about what's in it for us.
We see demonstrations of that all the time. We see that when people begin to take care of their relationships, the benefit comes back to them emotionally, and the satisfaction, or in some cases, people overcome feelings of depression by reaching out and doing some caring activity for other people, and we see that demonstrated every day. I mean, we keep bringing it up because it is so effective.
It is effective, and it's important to reinforce that, because that I really believe, and the story really demonstrates this, that it wasn't really reinforced for him in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
that he didn't really understand the value of it, that he thought, okay, this kind of thing is good for some of my friends, and there's people in the town, but not for me. I've got to do bigger things. um, and it took a lot to get him to finally realize that, to really get that reinforcement. um, and sometimes we have to do that for ourselves, and sometimes we have to reinforce that by saying thank you for your service.
Right, right. I really appreciate what you say about the folks that are considered essential workers. I mean, it's not a term that we applied to people who were stocking shelves in a grocery store. But that's how we get food. So we begin to realize that everybody has value and what they do has value. And sometimes we need to think about what value um, we bring to the lives we have. So they may seem mundane to us at times, but if you're a sibling, a parent, a cousin, a friend, you have value in your actions toward the people that are a part of your life. I was talking to some young people this week, so even in the short week, several times, and of course, like you say, we have this constraint of COVID, so you don't do the things that you would normally do because we're trying to keep a lid on the number of COVID cases that show up in the emergency room. because we're beginning to run short of beds in some areas
Right.
of the country.
So yeah, so and what you can do to add value is to keep distance,
You can stay.
and you can wear a mask if if you got to be out,
Yes.
and be
Yes.
conscious of that, and kind of blow through that difficulty of stopping, starting. That's difficult, and it's tiring. It's tiring
Yes,
to
it is.
to just kind of just take my mask off and just hope nothing happens, or you kind of just do this, and maybe it won't, maybe I'm okay, of course we don't know. We don't go get tested one day and then the next day you're positive. So I mean, it's happening all the time. So
See it all the time.
it's a very difficult situation, and it's very easy for us to think, oh gosh,
But if we take a
but
minute,
it's valuable to do that. It's important to think about the reward of not getting sick, not spreading sickness, the consequence as well of, the possibility of filling up the beds. And, you hear it all the time. I had a client this morning that said they were doing well, they're no problem. And they had this outbreak at work, and several people are out just like that. And then they started taking it seriously. They started going, whoa, we got
yes. And, we get things, we hear on the news, a person in Louisiana who was elected as a representative to Congress, first time, died.
Yeah, not an old, 41 years old.
Yeah. So, but while we're at home doing that, we can also think about how to interact and to sustain the relationships that are important to us. And sometimes just really small things that we can do to reach out to somebody. We have some responsibility. How do you take care of a relationship with a friend? If you're a college student, you got, you can send text messages. Sure. Yeah, you can do that. But you could also go to a little more difficulty and get out a pen, and, they
actually write a letter.
They look something like this. This is a pen, has a point on it, and ink comes out of that end right there. Right. And you can take it and put it on a piece of paper and actually make marks. It's amazing.
And the symbols have some meaning.
They have meaning.
That make words.
And if I make them, they're really shaky looking. Okay.
Me too.
But they're still there, right? And you can just take a slip of paper. It doesn't have to be a Hallmark moment. You could rip off a piece of paper, take the backside of a receipt even, and write on it, I was just thinking of you. Hope everything's going well.
That's right.
Stick that in an envelope, get a stamp. They're the little things that you buy at the post office, and they got like a sticky backside on them.
Yeah, you used to have to lick them. You don't have to lick them anymore.
You don't have to lick them. I mean, look.
How easy is that?
Yeah. And you can just put that on there and write an address. Now, the stamp goes in the upper left-hand corner of the envelope. Okay. Most children don't know that today, but just saying. But that's the way it works.
It's
and you
the
send
small
that
things.
While you're thinking about doing it, you're enjoying the thought of doing it.
The thought of doing it, plus the thought of the person and any positive memory that you have of them, and on and on. And we're living in the relationship in that moment.
Exactly.
And then they get it and open it.
Yes.
And see, oh, this is from David.
Yes.
I hope that's really nice. That makes me feel good.
Yeah. Too bad he couldn't afford actual card. He had to put it on a slip of paper, but that's another story. But anyhow, you might get a phone call
Yeah.
where you actually talk. Now, that's another thing that these phones do that we have. They're amazing. I mean, we have like 5,000 photographs that we've taken with our phone that we have stored, and they're cool. Okay, they're cool. And we can text things, and, you know, we can do all that kind of stuff. We can do, you know, entertaining kind of stuff, but we can actually call somebody on these dang things. And they can hear our voice, or they can see our face and we can talk to them, which is a little more face to face, as they say.
FaceTime or a Zoom meeting.
Exactly. And we can take the time to invest in relationships. So that's the kind of thing that we need to be doing. Now, not everything is big. We're not always saving somebody's life, but it's amazing, isn't it? How sometimes little things like going to a little bit of trouble to write a note, or to reach out to somebody to have I haven't talked to you in 3 months. I just thought I'd give you a call. That it makes a difference. And it has value to the person and to you. It comes back to you. Mm-hmm. And maybe someday they'll show up and kick in $8,000 and save your building and loan.
Maybe so, but that's not why you're doing it.
That's right.
That's not why you're doing it, but that's the way it works. Is you invest in people, and you do get a return. Mm-hmm. And that's the point of this this video. Really, is the small things and how easy it is for really, you know, whatever outside influence to say, you know, this is success. This is what, you know, you should be doing to be important. You're on TV, you're on whatever, your name is at the top of something. You're named as the leader of something, and you're getting all this attention. That's not all the value there is. There's so much value in so many things that we do. And it's easy to get lost in the myth of what success is. It's striving the trap of striving. And I'm not saying that achievement motivation is not a good thing. It is. But sometimes we get caught in striving. And so you and I have had the experience of folks coming to see us who are, by all standards, are successful in their careers. They're, you know, heading a division, or they own a company they operate, and they're saying things like, you know, I just don't feel joy. I don't have joy. I should have joy. Everything is going well for me. Why don't I have joy? And usually what that does to us is lead us down a path that gets really small. And we're talking about this kind of interaction. So when we focus on these activities, like acts of caring or just positive moments, we begin to focus on small things and learn to be in the moment instead of out here somewhere. You know, if I'm continually striving and just looking for that picture, I'm not living right now. That's right.
And how can you have joy if you're not living right here in the present time? It's not possible.
Well, that just kind of reminds me, when I was growing up, you know, I was a baseball player, and you know, I just, in my young self, like George, I was convinced that I was going to be in the big leagues. You know, you know, I'm good, as good as anybody around me. You know, go to college and play. I'm, you know, good here, all conference. Shit, it's just a matter of time. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm ready. I'm really looking forward to the next thing. You know, it's college, the next college situation. Oh, pros, looking forward to that, you know, and and that's why as a parent, I was able to really see the value of John, my son plays, he still plays in college, of just playing.
Yes.
Don't get out there, you know, just don't get so far out there that you, and I didn't really have to teach him that, because in the beginning when he went to play, it was like, I get to see around my friends, you know, and then
Yes.
baseball got important later, but he still really got that that sense of enjoying what he's doing for what it is right now. Whereas I didn't really, I wish I'd done more of that. And I didn't really get that until later, until I couldn't play anymore. And then I really appreciated it until the pros said, no, we'll pick somebody else, so, but it really does drive the point home that you're talking about, that we do get really, it's easy to get out and ahead of ourselves and to focus on, focusing on what is right now and what we have and the people that are in our lives. Those can create a lot of happiness for us if we let it.
Yes.
Let it.
This is a good discussion for me as we're sitting here on December 30th, about to start a new year, and practicing being present.
Practicing being present. Well, I think maybe since it is the new year and we have our the achievement motivation, the goal setting that we talk about quite a bit, maybe one of the upcoming videos we can talk about how to set some goals that are beyond just a New Year's resolution that I'm going to do this and then it fades away.
Yes.
Forget about it, and identify some important things that will really, really change our lives, including changing our perspective, not just accomplishing big things, but just enjoying life more, being healthier, being living a more joyful life. I mean, that's a pretty good goal.
That is a very good goal.
That's a good goal.
Good discussion.
And another thing we've talked about is the idea of moral injury.
Yes.
The idea of, because that's what we're talking about too, is we're talking about, how, business kinds of decisions, and you're working for a company that may ask you to do things that aren't really on the up and up. And people have a hard time with that because it goes against the value, and they're also trying to feed their family. And so there's some moral injury that's becoming more and more common in people, and that's something that we can talk about as well. George never really had to deal with that because he actually got the chance to work for Mr. Potter. He offered him the equivalent of $270,000 a year for 3 years to just get rid of the building alone, I'll just pay you, he had the money, right? And George thought about it a second and he said, whoa, wait a second. No, no.
There's a good ethical dilemma.
Yeah. So he was in these ethical dilemmas all the time. But that's what a lot of people are dealing with right now with moral injury. So there's some more good things to talk about. I'm
looking forward to it.
All right. Well, Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year, everybody. And I hope everybody steps back and thinks about It's a Wonderful Life and enjoy the movie.
Thanks for telling us the story again.
All right.
Look forward to it.
We got stress conditioned by tradition, position, and religion. Do we listen? We're frozen in fiction, so division, not the mission. Trump, Biden, gaps widen, transition, blurred vision, a soul collision. Got a mind. And the stress divides me. Stress divides me. Mind the gap, hey. Mind the gap, hey. So why don't you help me? Why don't you join me? Why don't you help me?